And then I'm going to share. How are you this morning?
Man, I'm doing good. Excited. Super excited.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, as you know, this year has been, man, kind of crazy from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think it's a perfect time to talk about what to do when life goes crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Kendra and I have been sharing memes back and forth about 2020. And one of my favorites was I'm just told 2020 to pull over, I'm gonna get out. I'll just get out. I'll get out now.
One that I saw this morning, I think it was like, hey, I'm about to head back to 2019. Who wants to catch a ride?
That's funny. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear your story about pivoting. I think you and I both are very familiar with the topic. We've been in business long enough, we've been living long enough to where there's just some moments where it's like, you know what? I need to just turn this ship around and go in a different direction.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's necessary. Yeah, because if one of the things that I tell my clients that I'm working with is we have to stay focused on your vision, but we have to be flexible with the approach, right? So I think 2020 has definitely thrown a lot of us for a loop, really in more than one way.
Right.
And so it's just been oh, okay, here's another hurdle to navigate through, and for me to keep moving forward, this is what I need to change, this is what I need to tweak, this is what I need to do a little bit differently to keep moving forward, because I'm not going to stop.
Right.
I'm not going to stop.
Right. Is that when I think about pivoting, right? So my daughter plays basketball. And I was never a basketball player. I ran track. I played basketball 1 year, and it was really because all the guys came to the game. So I was like, I'm gonna play this sport, but I rode the bench the whole year. But one thing I think about when I think about pivoting is in basketball, right? There's so many different ways to get to the hoop, but the goal is still the same. And so it may be that you get there by yourself. It may be that you need a teammate to get there. You may take different paths every time you go down the court. The basket may switch from one end of the court to the other end of the court. And so when I think about pivoting, I think about basketball. It's my goal is still the same, but how I get there, man, that could take 25 different approaches.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's very, very true.
All right. I don't see the questions as of yet. So if any of you guys have questions, feel free to pop them in. But one of the things that, I definitely want to touch on today is kind of our personal stories of, pivoting and what that looks like. And, I know that in business, you and I have pivoted so many times.
Well, first of all, before we get too far into this thing, who are you? I mean, I know who you are, but not everybody knows who you are.
So, for those of you who do not know me, my name is April Nallen. I am the founder of Cultivator Consulting. And what I do is I help churches do better business. So I help them exceed and meet their goals of business. So churches do really well with their passion of teaching the word and reaching out to people and connecting. But one of the things that sometimes they struggle with is the business of ministry. And so my goal is to help them do better business so that ultimately they can impact more people. So that's what I do. Nice. How about you, Louisa? I know not everyone may know exactly what you do. What do you do?
Well, in a nutshell, I help my clients get shit done without burning themselves out. So the work that I do really involves looking at the business owner and their business holistically. So looking at their business as far as systems, seeing how we can streamline things, put some processes in place, automate things as well, and also look at opportunities to fire them from doing certain things and outsource,
Right.
tasks that need to be done in the business, but don't necessarily need to be done by the CEO of the business. And
Right.
then looking at that visionary themselves, like, are you taking care of yourself? What does your self-care look
Hmm.
like? And making sure that they have solid routines, that they're
Right.
taking care of themselves while they're actually working in their business, because there's a way to be able to like build your systems and your operations so that as you are working in the business, you are not just completely depleting yourself, but you're actually like charging your own battery as you are like pushing your vision forward. So
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I know you and I have worked together a couple times in the past. I'm really getting clear with my vision. I know some self-care stuff. A couple years ago, you were like, look, April, what are you doing to take care of yourself? How are you accomplishing that goal? And so really, a lot of it I contribute to you for taking a step back and being able to just breathe and kind of get my life together in some areas. So appreciate you, boo.
You're welcome. You're
All
welcome.
right. So I want to talk about a pivoting moment in your life. So it could be personal, it could be business, but what's one of those areas where, you were just like, man, I have to do a 180 or even, a 260 or a 285. What's one of those things? What's one of those areas where you really had to pivot and you were like, man, I'm pretty glad I did this.
Um, well, I would say one of the more recent pivots that I've had to do, it was around the Boss Talk community that I founded back in
Mm.
2018. So the way that that has looked up until now is it's been a monthly session. We've come together in person to hold those sessions. And in light of everything going on in the world right now, like that's just not possible. But it doesn't mean that that vision goes away just because the delivery needs to be a little bit different. So it was around mid-March, I believe, like when I realized like, okay, we're not going to be able to have the March one in person. It was
Oh,
actually
yeah.
going to be an in-person watch party for Self-Made, that documentary on Netflix that had come out about
Right.
Madam
I
CJ Walker.
remember that.
So yeah, so I was super excited about that. My team was, working on getting this amazing panel together that actually was going to include some heavy hitters, like one of them actually in our local government.
Hmm.
But that obviously didn't work. And so the uh, the thing that I had to think through was, okay, like I'm not going to let this go. How do I need to do this differently? And so it was like, well, I clearly need to move this online if it's going to move forward because, meeting in person isn't going to happen anymore, at least for right now. And so then it was like, okay, meeting live, that's more than just a notion. Like, okay, we're just going to move online.
Yeah.
Like, we have to
Yeah.
actually think through, like, what are the systems? What are the changes that I need to make
Hmm.
to actually make this happen? What is
Hmm.
the new, like, registration process need to look like? What
Right.
kind of information do the ladies need to have before they're coming? How do things change with the guests that I have come on that I interview? All of those different things I had to
Hmm.
think through to figure out how I was going to, continue to deliver this community, like this supportive community to the Boss Talk, ladies
Right.
that have been part of this for almost 2 years now. And so was able to kind of like do some brainstorming and figure out, all right, this is what this is going to look like. This is how we're going to do this, going forward. And
Right.
then, move forward with that change, like that revised vision, but still
Right.
looking for a
Right.
vision.
Awesome. Awesome. I love how you immediately thought about, the experience for other people, how you thought about what that was going to look like. And also, looking at the how you could still provide something that was excellent, even though you had to pivot, even though and it was a big shift, right? Because for Boss Talk, really one of the greatest components of it is the fact that you get to meet in person and you get to touch and talk and see and, and hug and all those different things. So how do you create this online experience that kind of gives people the same feel, but it's not the same. Um, and I think there's a lot of businesses that are being affected by that right now. How do you still provide the same feeling and the same environment and the same level of excellence when everything's completely changed?
Well, I think you have to give yourself some grace. You're not gonna,
Yep.
right? Like there's no way in an online setting that I can fully give that same experience to the Boss Talk community. Like I just can't. Like
Right.
I can't do anything to replace, an embrace from
Right.
somebody that you are familiar with and used to seeing
Hmm.
in an online way.
Right.
We can definitely do like networking in a very similar way. We can use breakout sessions and have smaller conversations, and there's a way to still keep it intimate and those kind of things. But you do have to, I think, let go of trying to fit your current normal into your new normal.
Yeah. Oh, that is so great. My
Yeah,
favorite saying is create your new normal.
yeah.
Create
So
your new normal.
yeah, you have to, reevaluate like, what is the value I'm going to be able to bring now? What
Mhm.
is the experience I'm going to be able to create now? What's going to be the takeaways that they're going to be able to walk away with now? Because I mean, it's different. It is different.
Exactly.
It's totally different. But I guess like the main thing for me was letting them know like I'm not going anywhere. I am still going to be here
Yeah.
as an anchor in the marketplace to be that place where it's a safe place to come, where you don't have to feel like, hey, I've got my shit together. You still are able to
Right.
meet with your other Boss Talk sisters.
Yep.
And now we'll be able even to expand, right? So there's always like a collateral
Yeah.
beauty that you experience in trauma, I think.
Right. Right.
And that's part of it, right? Like with Boss Talk specifically, unless you were like in East Valley, Arizona, you couldn't come to Boss Talk. You couldn't
No.
participate.
No.
And
I would drive. I would drive over like 47 and a half minutes to get to Boston. So
yes, 47 and a half, because the half counts.
it does. Every second counts.
Yeah. So right. So part of that collateral beauty or the silver lining or whatever your verbiage
Mhm.
is around it is that now women nationwide can actually experience Boss Talk. Will
Yeah.
it be the exact same experience that we've had for like the last 18 months? No,
Nope.
but it's going to be like this new chapter that's
Yeah.
out there that is more inclusive of women everywhere
Yeah.
versus just like right here in East Valley,
Right.
Phoenix. And so that's one of those things that like is helping me to even like push forward, like, okay, like we have been able to expand our reach. We're going to be able to support more women. More of their stories are going to be able to be told because, I know some amazing women here, but I know some amazing women like in other places as well. And it's like, hey, I get to talk to you now. Like I get to, introduce the badass that I know in Ohio to the people who are here in Phoenix.
Right.
And vice versa. I get to, introduce women that I have met here over the decade that I've lived in
Mhm.
Phoenix with women that I know in other places. And so it's just like,
Yeah.
hey.
Awesome. Awesome. So one of my, I guess, fondest pivoting moments
Mm-hmm.
was actually about, let's see, I've been in business for 7 years. So it's probably 5 years ago. When I started my business, I always knew that I wasn't like the 9 to 5 chick, right? Like there was always something in me that was like, I feel like a caged bird and I just want to fly and, I just want to be creative and I want to just do things at odd hours of the day. And so I always knew I wanted to be something other than what I was, clocking in, clocking out. And so at the time, I was working in marketing, but I was doing trade show marketing. And so, I won a couple of different awards and, people were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're great at this. And so I thought, I'll turn this into a business.
Mm-hmm.
And so for many of you guys who don't know, the original name of my company was Event Cultivators because I was an event planner. And
I,
I was going to plan amazing business events for my clients, and I was going to hold their hand from beginning to end, and help them manage their budgets and all those things, because that's something I was good at, but I wasn't passionate about it. And at the time, I allowed other people to say, oh, you're really good at this. Like, this is what you should be doing. So I started this business, and it was great. I was able to help quite a few small business owners. Shout out to Kendra Tillman. She was actually one of my very first clients. Actually, I think she was my first paid client. Hey. And so, I worked with her, worked with other small business owners, but there was something missing. And every time I would work with someone, it became a little harder and harder. There was less joy in the projects, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, this isn't it. This isn't it. And so for me, I had to make the decision to pivot my business completely and figure out what was it supposed to be. So I knew my end goal was that I wanted to help people. I wanted to help organizations succeed. I wanted to help organizations that were making a difference in their communities, making a difference in the lives of individuals, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like at the time. So I had to go back to a personal kind of blank slate, right? And ask myself, what does that end goal look like? So one of the things that I had to do was just figure out what gave me joy again. One of the things that I learned, I like to talk. So if you guys know me, Lavista knows me.
What? You like to what?
I know, right?
That's like
so one of the things, right? One of the things that I realized was that consultants get paid to talk. And so I knew that I found more joy in building strategies versus simply executing a plan. And so then I also had to look like, who was I serving? And so one of the reasons why I pivoted to serve churches is because I had a really bad experience with the church about 15 years ago. And it was a lot of poor business practices. There were some terrible character flaws there. But a lot of it was the business side of ministry. And I knew how I felt when I left that ministry. And I knew that I didn't want other people to experience what I experienced. And so really my goal was, how do I help churches to make sure people don't have the same experience that I have? And so that was kind of that, aha, all right, this is something that I'm now passionate about, not just something that I'm good at, but something that I'm passionate about. And so one of the things, like you, I had to take stock of who this was going to affect, how it was going to affect them. I had to, one of my clients said I fired her. But, I had to let my clients know that, hey, I know we've been together, for a couple years, some of them, but I have to make this shift for me. And also, I don't feel like I'm serving you the best way that I could serve you. And so that was a big step, was making that shift with myself, making that shift with my clients. And then secondarily, how do I now tell the world what I do? Because, and funny story, I actually got an inbox on Facebook probably a month ago from someone who was like, hey, I'm planning this event. Can you help me? And I was like, well, this is what I haven't done in 5 years, but thanks. So that also shows me, that maybe I haven't done the best job of getting that word out. So, so that's an area where I call it really the total overhaul pivot, where, brand colors, logo, really kind of reinventing who I was so that I could really serve people the way that I feel like I was born to serve them, and then also do what I was passionate to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you going through that pivot with the name change and everything else. And, you're right. It's like one of those things, especially in a time like this, right, where things have kind of like come back. People are taking a step back, and they're really evaluating cash flow and different things like that. And, hey, you may not have experience yet. God bless you, if you haven't. But there's a trickle down effect, right? When something like this happens to their overall community, especially as entrepreneurs. And so I know for myself, most of the clients that I work with are small business owners. Some of them are just one-on-one private clients. But when their clients can't either afford or like need to pause their services with them, because most of my clients are B2B, right? And so it's just like, oh, well, then that affects their cash flow. And then it's like, well, then they can't necessarily pay their consultants. And then, it just kind of keeps coming down the flow a bit. And so it's just like the part of the story where you talked about the part of the story where you talked about the person reaching out to you and like, hey, can you do this? And, it's just like, it's tempting to kind of like fall back into those things because like, one, it's comfortable, two, that somebody will pay you to do it. And it's just like,
especially if they're talking the right type of dollar signs, it's tempting.
Right. And I've shared this when the anniversary for Boss Talk that we did last year, and Aisha actually interviewed me, and she was talking about how she was asking me how things had grown and progressed, and I was like, at the beginning, it used to be like, as long as what the client was asking you to do wasn't like illegal and unethical, like, you're gonna pay me, I'll do it. I'll do it because, hey, in that startup phase, like, you need the money. But yeah, part of the pivot is letting go, I guess, of like that past identity of your business and what you thought it was going to be, or not thought it was going to, but what it was, and like fully moving into this next phase and saying no to those opportunities that don't serve you well anymore.
I'm so glad you said that, because there is so much power in saying no. And I think as business owners, there are times when, we ask ourselves like, oh man, maybe this is something I could start doing, or this is something that, I could just do this a little bit more. And there's power. One of my friends, shout out to Yubika, she always says that, no is a complete sentence. Mm-hmm. No is a complete sentence. And I was watching this webinar last summer, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but he was talking about, what are we giving up when we say yes to something we should be saying no to? And so I think about, if I was to have said yes to the person who reached out and said, hey, I want to do this event, and I think that, you'd be great for it. Had I said yes, I would have missed an opportunity to serve someone that I was passionate about, that, to be honest, I would have served them better than had I taken this opportunity. And so I think that's something that really hits home, is that no is a complete sentence. Absolutely. And as business owners, and even our personal lives, we have to learn to say no, and say it a lot of times with joy. Like, nope, I can't help you, but here's someone who can. And I think you and I have shared some business in that manner in the past, where maybe you've gotten a client and you've worked with them, and maybe there was something that they needed that you couldn't provide, and you said, hey, let's connect with April. And I know you and I have worked with some clients together in that realm that really needed support in both areas. And instead of one of us kind of taking on both, which I think we probably could have managed through, right? Instead, we connected with each other and said, hey, how can we best serve this client together, versus I'm going to do something that I'm really not passionate about doing.
Yeah, well, that it's so funny that you use, because I remember exactly the lady that you're talking about. So going back to what I was saying, like, hey, yeah, if it wasn't illegal and wasn't unethical, like,
Right.
I'll do it. I got to a place in my business, and really am still there now, that it's, even in the midst of dealing with a pandemic, right? Where it's just like cash flow looks a little like, it looks a little scary, right? To be honest. But at the same time, like, I know what I want to do, and I know I'm very clear about what I don't want to do.
Yes.
And I don't want to do those things. So it's just like, even still, when those requests like come in, because, when I started my company back in 2005, I was a VA, which is a virtual assistant.
I sure.
Yeah. And so I'm not a VA anymore.
Okay. No, you're not. She is
and,
not a VA.
and so when people reach out, and I understand why they reach out, because maybe that was how they were
Mm-hmm.
first
Mm-hmm.
introduced to me, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to take that on. Now, I have a team now that actually can support other
Yeah.
people in VA work. So the work can come into the business, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not being done by me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like that's kind of part of a pivot is, owning the thing that you want to do and
Mm-hmm.
owning your no's. Like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. Because like you said, saying yes to something else is saying no to something else. Like if I
Yeah.
say yes, I'm saying no to this.
Yeah. I think another with saying no is that we will see something good and we will want to say yes to it, but saying no to good allows us to say yes to great.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was an opportunity I was presented with last summer where it was, I knew at that space and time that there were things that I was working on. I knew that I was shifting some things in my business, and this seemingly really great opportunity came across my plate. And I was like, well, let me think about it. And, you start thinking about, I really can't help this person. But I kind of went back to my litmus test of when I work with someone or I work with an organization, it's not just can I help you, but am I the best person to help you? And am I going to be the person who serves you the best? And
Mm-hmm.
I have no shame at all in telling a client that, yes, I can do this, but let me connect you with someone who can do it better. No shame in that at all. And I think that that's where kind of our ego and our pride, we have to push that down and be able to say that, yeah, I probably could do it, but I think there's someone else that you could work with that would maybe serve you a little better than I can.
Well, it's also part of having a growth mindset instead of
Yeah.
like a scarcity mindset,
Yes.
because scarcity says that businesses come in, that inquiry has come in. If I don't do it, even though it's not
Yep.
necessarily completely in my wheelhouse, or I'm not super, super skilled at doing this, like, oh, like me, I can post to social media, but I'm not a social media manager, right? Like I don't know the ins and outs
Yes.
and like this and that, but like I could work
Yes.
through it. And if somebody wanted to pay me for some
Mm-hmm.
subpar results, sure, I could do it.
Right.
And they would be probably unhappy with the growth of their accounts and things like that. But like, yeah, I could take it on. But when you have like more of that growth mindset, it's just like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this inquiry, this is not the best fit for me. Like this does
Yep.
not like fully use like my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got great partners. Like I know somebody that is like a really great social media person.
Exactly.
I want to connect you with that person, one, so that you are serviced well and that you're taken care of. And one of the things it does, like, it puts me in the position of a great resource. Like, even though I'm not the person that's doing their social media, they know that they
Mm-hmm.
came to me. And even
Right.
though it wasn't my company that did it, I was able to help them fulfill that need. So
Exactly.
the next time they
There
have
you
an
go.
issue with their business, they're going to come back to me. And it's like, hey, I don't know if you can help,
Mm-hmm.
but here's my problem. And then if it's something that I can do, like, I'm definitely going to pick up the ball and run with it. But if
Yeah.
it's not, hey, here's somebody else that I trust that would
Mm-hmm.
support you and serve you in the way that I would. I trust you going to them,
Exactly.
because it's not that I've got to like hold on to like everything that's coming my way or like nothing else is going to
Mm-hmm.
come.
Yep.
You need to like send things away to other people when it's appropriate, so that you have the capacity to actually take on that, like you were saying, that really great opportunity. Because if I was bogged down with posting to
Yep.
social media and doing all this and
Yep.
doing that, when I run into a client that needs a full blown um, build out of a process,
Right.
I would have no time to do that,
Nope.
because it's like I'm spending hours here and I'm spending hours there and I'm doing all of this work that is important to the client, but it's not the best use of my time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think, it all comes back to, pivoting, being owning those decisions that you're making, whether
Yes.
it makes it feel like, oh, am I going to lose business on this? Like, if you stand your ground and do
Mhm.
those things that like you really like want to do and like are tied to the vision of like where you're going, those are the things you're going to attract. And the people that like you've helped and sent over and referred, like those people aren't going to forget that. The person that you sent the business to, they're not
Right.
going to forget that. They're going to remember, oh, hey, April is really great at blah, blah, blah. Hey,
Mhm.
this person that I'm working on social media, like this is a problem now that they have. I need to get
Exactly.
that back over to April. Hey, I know Lavista does blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah.
Yep.
They're dealing with this. I'm going to like send that back over to Lavista. I mean, and it just works. And you are then able to do the work that you love with people that you really
Yes.
want to do it with.
Yes. Doing the work that you love. So I know we've been talking a little bit about what does pivoting look like, right? Why would you need to pivot? We've shared some of our pivoting stories. So now I want to share just a few things of how do people pivot, right? So what are some of the key things that you need to do when you're in a situation and you're trying to pivot? And I think that, the things that we're about to share are true for business, but also true for your personal life. So, I know going into 2020, I had this great plan because I'm a strategist. And so, if anyone knows me, I make lists to make a list. And so I think you and I both, we were like, yes, 2020, we're going to kill this thing. We are going to rock this thing. And then 2020 hit and it was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
This wasn't on my list. And so I want to talk about what does it look like to pivot? What
Mhm.
are some of the things that people need to do? And so I'll just share, a couple things that I live by. And shameless plug, I wrote a book last year, yay, called Move the Finish Line. And really what it's talking about pivoting. It's talking about those things that we have created in our life that may need to shift and change. But there's really three things that I focus on when I talk about pivoting, when I talk about moving the finish line. And the first one is you got to face the facts. And, you have to be honest with yourself that things are just not the way you plan them to go. Things aren't working out. My business is not where it needs to be. Maybe my personal life isn't where it needs to be. Lavisa, I know that when you talk about self-care, this is one of the things that I feel like people have to face the facts that they're not doing great self-care and it's affecting their life. And so I think that's the very first thing is, you got to own up to something ain't right and it needs to be fixed. And then the second thing is ask for help. Once we know that there's something in our business that needs to pivot, a product isn't working. When I talked about my big pivot story from being an event manager to now being a consultant, I didn't know quite what that looked like.
Mhm.
And so I went out and I talked to other consultants. I read consultant books. I talked to people in my business circle about what does this look like to actually pivot in my life. And like I said, I did a complete overhaul. So I went from event planning to being a consultant.
Mhm.
And so we have to ask for help. That's one of the reasons why I love you is that you and I in a heartbeat, will call each other, text each other, and be like, hey, look, I can't figure this out. What do you think it is? And we're honest.
Yeah.
We are very honest.
Brutally honest sometimes, but
Yes.
you know,
Yes. But you need that.
yeah. You need to have people in your corner that aren't just yes men, right? Like, oh my God, it sounds like a great idea. I'm like, no, that idea is dumb. And here's why. And the end result, like I can kind of get with you on the end result, but I think this is probably a better way to like get there
Mhm.
because the thing that you're thinking about doing right now, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. My one of my funny moments. This was a couple years ago, and I was driving into the office, and I had this idea. I can't remember what I wanted to do, but I had this idea. It was like 7:30 in the morning, and I called you, and I was like, Lavisa, let me tell you what I want to do. And I ran down all this stuff, and you were just like crickets. And I was like, oh, what do you think? And you're like, April, you don't even want to do that. That's not even what you do. Just stop. And literally in the car, it was like I had this balloon and you were like, pop,
Yeah.
But you were absolutely right. And the reason why I love that I've given you permission to do that is because that idea would have cost me a lot of time and it would have cost me a lot of money. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really glad that I have people in my life like you, so that when I call with those crazy ideas, you can just be like, girl, look, just stop. No, no.
Yeah.
And y'all can't be worried about your feelings getting hurt. You can't be worried about, oh, my friend hurt my feelings because she didn't like my idea. If it's a dumb idea, someone needs to tell you that it's a dumb idea.
Yes. Yeah. You need to give somebody permission to be able to say, that's dumb.
That's dumb. That's dumb. Don't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing on my list, and then I'm sure you've got some tips to share, is you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
We can seek help as much as we want to. We can go to webinars, we can hire coaches, we can hire consultants, we can, go get degrees, we can do whatever we want. But if we don't do the work, it's all for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lavisa, I'm sure you've met people who personally and professionally have had dreams, for a very long time. They have been starting a business, for 10 years. They're about to start a business. They're just about to start a business. But the problem is that, they're not doing the work. And one of my favorite saying is that you can't go anywhere with your car in park. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't care where your dreams want to go. I don't care where your big ideas want to go. I don't care where your desires want to go. If you're sitting in park, you're never going to go anywhere. And so you really have to do the work. And sometimes doing the work simply means I'm going to put myself out there and maybe I fail, maybe I succeed. I'm going to launch something. Maybe I fail, maybe I succeed. But the point is that you're doing the work and you're starting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think, I was telling you earlier that like a bit ago, like back in, January actually of 2019, I actually wrote a blog post about pivoting in your business. So like ready, set, pivot. And I used a funny story in that blog about Aiden locking us out of our truck.
Yes, I remember
And
that day.
and so it was one of those things, he was, obviously mobile and wasn't in our eyesight the entire time. And we had two sets of keys for my truck. And he had locked one set of keys in the truck and then he had lost the other set. So, here we are like ready to kind of like get into our normal routine. And it's just like, I don't have keys to get into the car. We're not gonna be able to get to school on time. We're not gonna be able to do this. I had an appointment, like a networking meeting, like as I was dropping him off from school, I was gonna go meet with somebody and da 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 da. And it's
Right.
like either, like when those kind of things happen, either you can like stay stuck like in the like the chaos, or like
Yeah.
you can take action, right? And really
Yeah.
that's all a pivot is. It's just it's a change in strategy.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just,
That's it.
it's just changing your plan. And so my, three things that I talked about and highlighted in that piece are very similar to the ones that you already shared. So like, hey, when a situation happens, one, you have to get real about
Yeah.
the situation that you're in.
Yeah. It is.
Denial here is not your friend, because what it
Yeah.
will do is it will cause you to just be paralyzed
Yeah.
in that process, and nothing will happen, and all that you're doing is focusing on like the problem, and you're not thinking about like, okay, what are my possible solutions?
Yeah.
So get real about what's going on, like be honest, like, hey, cash flow has like stopped, or it's like trickled down, and like this is not going to cover. Like either you can like sit there and be like, okay, now I'm like a broke going out of business owner, or you
Right.
can be like, all right, here's the reality, this is what I need to
Mhm.
do to like to change it.
Right.
And very similar to like what you were talking about, my step two is be open. And so it's seeking out that feedback, like, hey, here's this idea that I have, here's this change I want to make based on X, Y, and Z that's going on. What is your take on that, or what's your feedback on that? But the caveat has to be, it has to be somebody that you trust. Like it's not just some
Yeah.
random person that you share that with. And it should probably be somebody that at least has familiarity with what you're going through, right? Like there are times where I can talk to my dad about certain things, and like I can tell him like the highs that I'm having and the lows that I'm having like in the business, but I'm probably not going to talk through business strategy with my dad, simply because
Right.
like,
Right.
for one, he still has like a hard concept. Like, what is it that you do? Like, I have been on my
Seriously.
own, working full-time entrepreneurship for 7 years. And when I go home, he'll still be like, so, are you looking for a job? And I'm like, no,
Right.
actually,
Where
I'm
you working
not.
at now?
No, I own my own business. Like,
Right.
I'm not looking for a job. Like, and so it's just like, yeah, that's probably not who I'm going to be like, hey, what do you think about me doing blah, 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 right? Because
Right.
it's probably gonna be like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. But, having somebody that you trust to kind of talk through those details and understand the why and see where it is you're trying to go and be like, okay, like, yeah, or no, or tweak this or
Mhm.
change this or what have you. Um, and then the third step of mine is take action, right? Like, don't get
Yes.
stuck in analysis
Oh.
paralysis, because you can
Mhm.
think about things forever.
Yep.
Forever. You know, there are times when a woman will be at Boss Talk and will be talking about, like you were mentioning earlier, like this thing that she's wanted to do in her business for years. And it's like,
Right.
okay, like, where are you with that? And it's like, well, I've been researching this and I've been researching that. And, I took
Mhm.
this training and I did this and I'm, trying to get this in place. I mean, and you need to have preparation, you need to be prepared
Yeah.
for things, but, preparing just for the sake of preparing, like, you're just wasting your
What you
time.
gonna do with it?
Yeah, if you're not going to pull the trigger and take action, stop.
No,
Stop.
for
And
real.
so, like, with my coaching clients, I think that's one of the things that is very clear about working with me. Like, if you tell me that you want to do X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
you only have like so many times for me to like ask you, like, have you taken this action, have you taken this next step, have you done this, for you
Mhm.
to like say no, or to come up with an excuse of like why you haven't done it. It's like, oh, okay, we actually don't need to work together anymore because you don't want to do this,
Yep.
because you haven't taken one step, right,
Yep.
to like move forward. And sometimes I think that it's like, especially if your vision is like really big and maybe a
Yeah.
little scary, it's just like you feel like you have to do all of it or like none of it. And
Yeah.
I think that we forget that forward progress is still progress, right?
Yes. Slow
Um,
motion is still motion.
yeah, yeah. Like I remember being on a podcast with Kendra and we were talking about that, and it was just like, you might have a goal and it might be personal, like I'm going to lose 50 pounds by the end of the year.
Right.
And December comes and maybe you've only lost 35, and it's just like I failed at this goal. But it's just like,
Right.
you're not going to give yourself credit for the 35 pounds that you lost. Like,
Exactly.
you're not back at square one where it's like I still have 50 pounds to lose.
Mhm.
No, like, you're well more than like halfway there. Like, you still made progress, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, the take action is definitely a big part of that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. One of the things that I like to, kind of talk about when we're talking about starting a business and even pivoting
Mhm.
is the knee-jerk reaction. So you mentioned preparation, right? And sometimes, we have these grand ideas and we just want to leap. And so I want to, advise everyone out there, do your homework, prepare. One of my favorite sayings is, being an
Pause.
entrepreneur,
Their services
it's
within
like
most
we jump off a cliff and
interests.
build the parachute on our way down. We don't pack the parachute and then jump. It's like we jump and it's like, oh yeah, I need a parachute while I'm falling off this cliff doing what I'm going to do. And so a lot of us have really big dreams, really big ideas. I know when I started my business, I did it part-time for 2 years.
Mhm.
At the time, I was a single parent. I think I was still in school too. I was a single parent. I was still in school. I was working full-time. And so I started my business part-time until I got to the place to where I could make that shift to go to full time. Mine came in the way of a layoff.
Mm-hmm.
About 6 months before that, I kind of had this feeling that something was coming. And so I put my exit strategy in place, I put my plan in place, and then I walked into my place of business one day and didn't have a job.
Yeah.
The great thing about that was that I was prepared. Now, was it still hard? Yes. Was it still challenging? Yes. But I had been preparing for 2.5 years up until that point before I moved into that space. And so, for those of you who are thinking, I've got this great business idea, I'm going to quit my job, you're going to be homeless. And so, don't do that without a plan. Um,
Well, so
and
two
it
things.
can work.
Yeah,
Yes.
two things with that. I remember that layoff because I remember there's a picture
Mm-hmm.
of us. You were here at the house, and we were downstairs at my kitchen
Yes.
table, like
Yes.
working through things. Aiden
Mm-hmm.
was still a baby. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he was still a baby, like in his little rocker, like right
Yeah.
there at the meeting table with us. Um, and so, yes, I totally think that there is like God's honest truth of what you're saying. Like, don't quit without a plan. It's probably not the smartest thing to
Right.
to like leave your job without having finances a certain kind of way. I will say though, however, I did all the opposite of those things, and it worked out. So I mean, I know that that's more of an extreme
Right.
example, but especially like when I relaunched the business back in 2014, I had just walked away from a corporate career, and it was very demanding. So there was no way that I was
Right.
able to do consulting and do my job at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to the point where my husband and we had a conversation one day over dinner, and it was like, this is what I think I need to do. And he's like, this is definitely what you need to do. He's like, you need to go in and you need to resign. And I resigned. And like that Friday, we boarded our flight to Maui and we had a great, vacation. And I came home with 0 clients. But I did have a plan. Like, this is who I'm going to
Yeah.
go talk to. This is
Yeah.
who I'm going to go network, because
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I have like all the motivation is like, I've got to continue
Mm-hmm.
like helping sustain my family. But I think part of that, like that safety net, is having a very supportive spouse that,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we knew that we were going to be okay, even if I wasn't still like in corporate America. So
Right.
I always kind of chuckle internally when it's just like, don't do this, don't quit your job, don't whatever. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, okay. Because, like that's that like relaunch story. But like when I like started my company back in 2005, I literally did the exact same thing. Not married, single, on my
Yep.
own, living on my own, walked in and was like, I can't do this job anymore, and had no clients, no prospective of clients, nothing. And it was just like, all right, now I'm kind of in survival. And it wasn't easy. So like, don't, make it, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it was a walk in the park. Like, it was hard.
Oh, it
Because,
was very hard. It's
I
still
had
hard some days.
to make I had to make what I needed to take care of myself like every single month, like over and over and over. But that route is doable because I've done it twice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's key to know, though, having a support system. So starting mine as a single parent to during the time I got laid off, I was married. So it was very different, 2 different experiences from when I started part-time to when I launched full-time.
Mhm.
Because that, having a support system, and that support system changed. When I first started my business, my support system was more of my friends and family in my business community. And then when I got laid off, I did have at least some financial support from being married at the time, but I was the primary breadwinner. So there was a lot of pressure there still to make sure that things were taken care of.
Mhm.
One of the things that I want to share with people is, pivoting is not just for entrepreneurs like myself and La Vista. There are very large companies that pivot. One of the ones that I read about not too long ago was YouTube. And so many people know YouTube as the worldwide global business that it is. However, how many of you guys know that YouTube actually started as a video dating site? Yes. So YouTube was actually a place where you could upload your personal videos for dating. So that's how they started. And now they are the second most searched platform in the world. So they are creeping up slowly but surely behind Google. And so, that goes to show that just because you start out one way does not mean your pivot is a bad thing. So just imagine the people who started YouTube are now sitting around going, man, we thought that was a really great idea, but look at what it's become now.
Right.
Um, Another company I think about is Groupon. So we all know Groupon for the discounts that we get at different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Groupon actually started in Chicago with a group of people who were pooling their money together to help charities. And so it was kind of mediocre in Chicago, and no one really paid attention, but they ended up changing the name to Groupon, and it took off, and it's now what you see today. So, just really want to encourage. Yeah, I always try to find, when we're going through something, a big thing that helps me is to find other people, other organizations who've gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you can be someone like YouTube and Groupon who've gone through changes and they've succeeded, then I can go through changes and succeed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I like most about Boss Talk is hearing those stories from women, right? Like that's one of the
Yeah.
core values of it is
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to come in like, hey, everything is perfect with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you actually get to hear my story. Because, right, like there's a lot of times that we see each other, like on social media. And, my coach Aisha always talks about that is like the highlight reel of like someone's life or their
Oh
business. I'm
gosh,
going to show
yes.
you like the great things that have happened. Like,
Right.
oh, like,
Right.
yeah, look, I went and I spoke here and I went and I spoke there. And,
Yeah.
look at my book. But what we don't typically hear is, hey, my book proposal got, rejected 22 times before
Right.
somebody else picked it up, or I decided to self-publish it. Or you saw me speak here, but I also, sent out, 15 other pitches. They're the only
Yep.
ones that actually invited me to come. And so it's like you're able to actually take something from that story, like, oh my God, like that's the experience that you've had. Like if you
Yeah.
can do that and
Yeah.
you can survive through that, so can I. Like I'm not just having, like I get to like peek behind the veil and see like the full, like the good, the bad, the ugly of like actually what
Right.
transpired to get you there. And even though
Mm-hmm.
like that thing that I saw on like Facebook or on Instagram was like, wow, like I aspire to do that, but like I actually get to understand what the journey was like and all the
Yeah.
disappointments and the overwhelm and
Yep.
the nights that you were at home like crying and wanted to give up and like F this business and all those different things. And it's just like, yeah, like we have to be okay with some vulnerability to be like, hey, this hasn't been easy. This is like, this part of the process really sucked. If you want to save yourself some, difficulty and some pain, don't do these things because I've
Right.
done it and
Right.
it was horrible.
Yep.
So totally do, the opposite of what I did in that situation so that you'll come out better and you'll come out further
Yeah.
ahead. And so like one of the businesses that I wanted to highlight, it's not on the scale of YouTube, but it's a local business here. It's in Mesa, downtown Mesa, and it's Worth's Sandwich. And I love eating there. Like they have like delicious food. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the pivots like I've seen them do like with their marketing and things that they're offering is they actually have been putting together grocery bundles for their clients. So
Yeah.
instead of, yeah, just offering a, hey, here's a meal that you can pick up and then, take home and enjoy with your
Mhm.
family, still come and pick up and order a meal that you can take out, right? But you can also, if you need it, order ahead this grocery bundle that comes with supplies that are coming from all of their different partners. Like they started a farmer's market and they work with all these different vendors for the food that they have coming into the restaurant. And it's like,
Mm.
you can go home with like your ready-made meal, but you can
Right.
also leave with a few pounds of meat, some fresh big artisan bread, you know, some milk from one of like the local farmers. You can leave with this, and you know, to sweeten the deal, they also have like toilet paper and paper towels that are all included
Nice.
in this bundle. And it's one of those things, it's like they've made that pivot to from serving just like an immediate need to something that's more sustaining for their clients, right? And so it's just like, wow, like just seeing the creativity and the ingenuity of things that are happening all around. Like this is, you know, one of those things that like, I mean, they're not a grocery store. So, I mean,
Right.
that's not what they
Right.
went into business to do, but they are pivoting a bit to
Mhm.
serve the need of their actual customer. Cause it's like, yeah, like I would like
Right.
a sandwich, but I also need
Right.
to make sure that I have groceries in the house for a week and
Mhm.
I need toilet paper and paper towels. And it's like, we've
Right.
got you covered on all of it.
Mm.
Right. And it's like, that was amazing to see. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like that's great.
I love it. I love that you told that story because I think when people hear the word pivot, they think about doing something completely different than
Yeah.
what they're doing now. And that's not always the case, right? So there's different kinds of pivoting out there. So, we've talked a lot about the total overhaul pivot, which is like, I did a 180, I'm doing something completely different. I think there's a couple other pivots that people can be making right now just with the way that the world is changing. People are working from home. You're not able to serve your clients in the same way. And so there's two other pivots that I think are really relevant right now. One is the flexibility pivot, right? So that may be serving a different clientele with the same business that you have. So maybe for whatever reason, and I'll just give one, there was an organization that they provided really healthcare, I'm gonna say advice, but tools for men. And one of the things that was happening was that they now had more women coming to them for help, right? So you could say, well, we're a business that just serves men, and that's it. And some organizations, yes, that is your clientele, but in this season of your customers having different needs, could you serve a couple? Could you serve men and women with a different product? Could you pivot in that way? And then the other thing is that pivoting is not always forever, right? So there may be some things that in this particular season that you need to do to pivot to serve your audience, to serve your customers better, but it doesn't mean that that has to be the way it always is forever. Seasons change, right? Your business is going to change. I think from year to year, you need to look at your business and ask yourself, how can I pivot to be better this year and not wait for something catastrophic to happen? You lost all your clients, now you have to pivot. But what can you be planning for year to year to pivot? And then the other one that I like is the expansion pivot. So this is really where maybe you're taking something from being templatized to customized, right? So maybe you have a certain strategy that you've always used with your clients, or a certain product that really is more of a bundle, or something like that. But is there a way for you to now start offering something that's more custom? So I love the story you just told about how maybe they were known for one thing, but because of the way the world has shifted, they're now expanding themselves to serve their clients in a different way. But it's not taken away from who they are,
Yeah.
it's not taken away from their vision, and it's not taken away from their purpose, but they are expanding themselves and shifting what they offer to meet their clients' needs right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have some ladies that are on Facebook with us. So Aisha said, I love Worth Takeaway. Like, I think anybody who eats there is just like, oh my God, like they're amazing. And Jessica saw their strategy on social media and thought it was definitely smart, and
Nice.
loves their buffalo chicken dip. Like, yeah, like everything that they make is amazing. Everything they make is amazing. And so those are really good examples, pivot examples that you gave. And I'll just add one more, and it's time, pivoting with your time.
Yes.
So I know for me, you know, I've been a work at home entrepreneur really forever, really since the start of my business. It's
Mhm.
always been an online virtual way for me to support my clients.
Mhm.
But then adding in the different aspects of like being a wife, because the business came first. Like I was an entrepreneur before I got married. I was an entrepreneur
Right.
before I was a mom. So I've always had the business,
Mm-hmm.
but then figuring out like how do I juggle also being a wife, and
Yep.
also being the wife of somebody who, in my case, also works from home. And how do we make that work without like
Yeah.
killing each other? Because we're with each other,
Right.
especially now with everything going on with COVID-19. Like we're around each other all the time because we can't even go anywhere. Like we used to at least be able to like, okay, I'll take a break and, or my husband would take a break and like go to the mall or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, like it's like
Right.
one of those tests, like we really like each other, right? Because there is no
Yeah.
escaping. We can't go anywhere. We can't get a babysitter, for our son and like have a date. So it's just like, but part of the even the pivot that I've had to do is like with my time as far as my work schedule. Like my work schedule is not the same now as it was
Yeah.
like in February. Like then,
Mm-hmm.
my son was out of the house, he was away at school, he had his things, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like those are times that I knew like I could take care of this, I need to take care of
Yep.
that. And
Yep.
so you even have to like make a pivot with your time, like, you know,
Yes.
do how do I become more flexible like with the time that I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
office versus like the time that I'm with
Mm-hmm.
my family because they're here now. Like, he's
Right.
4. I can't just lock myself in my office for hours on end with a 4-year-old running around the house like with free
Right.
range to do whatever he wants. And so it's, even having to change my strategy around when I get things done, when is a more um, appropriate time, I guess, for me to even like get on the phone with a client, because then it's like I have
Yeah.
other things I have to consider, like what is my husband doing at the time, like can our son be with him, can I set up
Mm-hmm.
like a virtual play date with him to maybe occupy him
Mm-hmm.
downstairs so that I can take a call. So it's even being flexible with having a change in your strategy, a pivot, with the time that you're dedicating to the business. Do you need to shift, the time that you're working on your business a little bit later because it's quieter because
Mm-hmm.
maybe your kids are on a nap? Do
Right.
you need to focus on doing things earlier in the morning because people are asleep and like that's the time that it can be, you can be by yourself. So even
Mm-hmm.
looking at your time, like, your approach, and one of the things we've talked about, but your time too, the way that you're using it, what you're focusing on, at different times in the day, knowing when you're most productive. Now is probably not the time to be like a stringent, like I have to work from 8 to 5, like in my office. Like you're
Right.
probably going to have to be a little bit flexible and creative about even the
Yeah.
time that you're spending on your business.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think also being realistic about the time that you have,
Mhm.
right? So, as I mentioned, when I started my business, I was a single parent. I then got married in the middle of that. I am now back to being a single parent. And so that looked very different when I was a business owner, like you said, of a 4-year-old. She was 3 or 4 when I started my business, to now being a business owner of an 11, almost 12-year-old.
Mhm.
And even though, yes, I do have more of those periods of, okay, I can work for a few hours and the house, is most likely not going to burn down. I also have to be a mom.
Yeah.
And, I want to be able to show her that, you can do it all. You can be a mom and you can, have a business and still be present. And so one of those things that I've had to kind of pivot on is, with her being home, is what am I scheduling to do with my time, right? So, one of the things, we do a schedule, me and her dad, where she's here 1 week on, 1 week off. And so I know that if it's recording videos, if it's writing, if it's things where I really need to be, laser focused on, I may say, okay, I'm going to schedule those for the weeks that she's gone. Because if I schedule those for the time that she's here, and then I find myself neglecting her, that's not realistic, right? That's not a win-win. And so I also think being realistic about the time that we have, we're now, as parents, homeschool teachers. And so one of the things that I did, she was doing her work, and she has kind of a game room that has a desk, and she was doing her work back there. but I noticed that, she kind of wanted to be closer and she wanted to be part of, the environment that I was in. And I thought, great. So I moved her little desk into my office. And so now during her school hours, I'm working, she's working, we may take lunch together, we do recess together and take a walk. Whereas, the weeks that she's with her dad, then I can work through if I need to. I can work late if I need to. I can work, super early if I need to. And so I think also being just realistic about what we can accomplish with the time that we have is a huge point too.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Though I will say that my son seems to want me to be in the office more because he knows that the more the mommy works, the more money I make to take him to the zoo. So he has a vested interest in me being in my office because it's all about the zoo.
Well, be happy it's about the zoo. So I don't know if you saw my post yesterday. So my daughter turns 12 next month, which is crazy to me. And she's like, Mom, so for my birthday, I want a new iPhone, and a mini fridge. So I said, okay, why do you want these things? So she's like, okay, I'll let you know. I'll come up with something. So she created a full-blown PowerPoint for each and did a full-blown presentation that included things like why I need this. I don't really need it, but I want it. The reviews on Amazon, the size, the color, the dimensions, and then proceeded to say, here's how you will pay for it. And so same thing is that she knows that, hey, when I'm doing the things that I love to do in this office, it is a benefit to her.
Yeah.
And her mini fridge and her iPhone. So no guarantee that she's getting a new iPhone and mini fridge. But it's funny that they understand the concept.
Oh yeah, he totally understands. I was sharing with you, like, I blew his mind. We were downstairs and I was finishing up a call with a client and coming downstairs and making breakfast. And he was like, Mommy, why are you always on the phone? And I said, most of the time mommy's talking to a client. And that's how mommy gets paid. And he was just like, people pay to talk to you on the phone? I said, they do. They do, right? And so, like, I think that even was just like, oh, okay. Like, to him, it's like there's more Zoo money. So the more mommy has calls, the more money we have. It all comes back to the Zoo. But I totally feel right on the mini fridge. When I was pregnant with Aiden, I was jockeying for a mini fridge for his nursery so that I would have access. Like, my pitch was like I would have access to like cold water while I was like nursing and caring for the baby. I didn't get my mini fridge, but yeah, I feel her.
Well, we'll see what she gets for her birthday. Awesome. All right. So I really want us to kind of close with maybe some of the things that people can do when they're pivoting. And I really want you to touch on maybe some of the self-care things, because pivoting really can be a time of anxiety. Sometimes it can be depressing. Sometimes it can it is very scary. But what are some of the things that, people really can do when they're pivoting? And I'll kind of let you start and then throw in a few points that I have.
Yeah, so one of the things that comes to mind, I'm thinking through right now, I'm leading a group of women through a self-care challenge. And the first night we actually did a burn. And so I think anytime that you're kind of going through a transition, be it because of a pandemic like the one that we're in right now, or just because something has changed in life, or like your business needs or what have you, there's a part in that transition that you have to, I think, like, acknowledge what it is that you're losing and kind of grieve through that. And you have to acknowledge it, like we talked about in the beginning, like getting real about what is needed to pivot in the business. And so it was an exercise that I took them through that I think would be good in dealing with the pivot. And it was writing down just all the stuff that you're feeling. So, something that you're changing in your life or pivoting, in, your personal life, write down the stuff that you're feeling,
Yeah.
like the thoughts that you're having,
Yeah.
if it's fear, if it's anxiety, if it's, hey, I'm uncertain if this is going to work, all of those things, write them down. All the stuff that's not serving you well, like, clear out your headspace and help to
Mhm.
clear your heart as well. And once you have all those things written down and you feel good about getting it out, because one, there's a release that happens when you just start writing stuff out and just kind
Mhm.
of like, yeah, like I'm not, gonna keep dealing with like this anxiety. I'm not gonna keep dealing with this fear, and I'm not gonna keep dealing
Mhm.
with this. I'm not gonna keep dealing with that. You take it in a safe way,
Mhm.
you burn it. You burn it, and you envision all of that leaving you, everything that you wrote on that paper, um,
Mhm.
leaving, right?
Yeah.
And so then I think that that helps you to get to the next step of like, all right, this is who I need to talk to like work through the strategy so that I
Mhm.
can then follow through and then take the action that I need in order to make this pivot happen, be it in your business or your personal life. So that would definitely be one self-care tip that I would share, is going through that exercise of having a good burn.
Nice. Nice. One of my, and I'll share, I guess, two really quick. So one of mine is stepping back from the problem and relaxing. One of the things, so last year was one of my most trying years, personally and then also professionally. And there were some areas that I needed to pivot on. And one of the things that I felt that I needed to do was rest, right? What's hard about that is that sometimes when we are in the midst of a pivot, when we're in the midst of trying to figure things out, we think, if I just think about this for one more hour, if I just think about this for another 30 minutes, I'm going to figure it out. And sometimes what we really need to do is just take a step back and rest. And so I would, when I started to feel that anxiety around not being able to figure out what the next step was, I would kind of set it to the side. I would go take a walk. I took a trip to Sedona for a couple of days last summer, just to clear my head. And what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to get into a different environment. I know that's a little bit difficult now with the state that we're in, but even getting to a different room in your house to think, go outside in your backyard, take a walk, but step away from the problem and kind of take care of yourself for a little bit and then go back to the problem. And it was just funny how when I took a step away, it was almost like, man, my head was a little clearer. And when I came back to it, it was like, okay, now I can see a little better versus I'm going to work on this all night until, I figure it out. And I do not subscribe to team no sleep. I sleep. I sleep about 7, 8, if I want 9 hours at night. My thing is, number one, that problem is going to be there in the morning, so I might as well get some rest. And number two, God doesn't sleep, so let him deal with it while I'm resting, and I'll see him in the morning. And then the second thing that I found that really helps when you're pivoting, and I mentioned this in the book, Move the Finish Line, it's one of the exercises, is really a gratitude list. When we stop and think about the things that we're thankful for, it takes our mind off of ourselves and our problem and it puts it on someone else. And so I challenge people that when you're in the midst of pivoting and you're feeling stressed and you're feeling anxious, sit down and challenge yourself to write 25 things that you're grateful for.
Mhm.
I know when I started that project last summer, I started with 3. And that really was all I could get to at the time. But over time, I was able to get to 25. And what I realized was when I took my mind and my thoughts off of myself, and put them on other people and other things, and just really took stock of the wins in my life.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're looking at a problem and we're only looking at it from the problem perspective. Like you were saying, if you said you were going to lose so much weight this year, but maybe you met half that goal, you're so focused on the fact that I didn't meet this goal. You need to celebrate the win that you got started, celebrate the win that you got close to the goal, celebrate your wins, celebrate those things that you're thankful for.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So awesome. This has been amazing, at least for me. I feel like it's been amazing for you. Um,
No.
I hope those of you who joined us and watched the video later that you guys really got something out of this. Our goal is, she and I, Lavisa and I, we share a lot with each other. We call each other when things are going good, when things are going bad. And sometimes it's good just to be able to share with someone the things you're going through. And so our goal is once a month, first Saturday of the month, we're going to share with you guys some of the things that we've been through, some of the things that we've heard about in the industry, in hopes that, they'll benefit you guys as well.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And so, that's the whole thing of being a business bestie, right? So like people hear about April, not necessarily always by name, but I do call her my business bestie, whenever I'm um, talking at Boss Talk, because it is important to have that person or that group of people that has your back
Yeah.
really through whatever, right? So we celebrate business successes.
Yeah.
We, help each other through those valleys. We wipe each other's tears away when our hearts are broken. We're always there for, the hugs that are needed and the support that is needed, and the Mexican food that needs to be consumed
Yes.
because we need to comfort eat, all of those things. And then, one of the things we were just talking about just through the duration of this time together is, we've definitely given each other permission to give each other like honest feedback, whether the other person really wants to hear it or not.
Yeah.
And I think that will be true over, the next few months of, us doing this. You might not necessarily hear what you want to hear, but we'll do our best to always deliver what we feel our truth is. Right. And so, yeah, that, my business bestie, sometimes I call her my business bully. When that's the time when she's telling me something I don't like, I don't want to hear this bullshit from
Pretty
you. Like,
much.
what are you talking
Pretty
about?
much.
But yeah, it's needed. Like I need to hear that because nobody else is telling me like, no, Lavista, like get your life together. And I'm like, my life is together. And she's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, it's not. So, yeah. All right, so with that, I think we're going to sign off. So I know we had some technical issues with like getting broadcasted this morning. I always say like technology is my friend until it is not, and it was not this morning.
It'll turn on you pretty quick.
Yeah, so yeah, it will turn. Like, I thought we were friends, and technology's like, nah,
No, we're not.
we're not friends at all. So we'll make sure to get this video shared with you all. Thank you everyone that joined us live. Like, it was such a pleasure to read through your comments as we were talking. Hopefully you did get something out of this. When we repost it, we'll definitely share those resources that we talked about, the link to April's book, Move the Finish Line, and to my blog post, Ready, Set, Pivot, which both are really great resources for making a pivot in your life and or business. So with that, thank you for joining our first ever Besties Brunch, and we hope you will join us again here in May. Bye, y'all.